They told me my husband had gone missing during a work trip. Everyone panicked, everyone except my sister. While the police searched for him, I found something that shattered every version of truth I thought I knew. His wallet, hidden inside my sister's purse. From that moment, I stopped being the grieving wife and became the hunter in a game they didn't know they started. My name is Haley Morgan, and until 3 days ago, I believed my life in Ravenwood, Colorado, was exactly what it appeared to be: predictable, stable, maybe even boring. At 32, I'd settled into the rhythm of spreadsheets and data models at Northbridge Analytics, coming home each evening to a house that felt increasingly empty whenever Ethan was away on business. Ethan Morgan, my husband of 7 years, had built his career on these trips. As a senior consultant for a tech firm downtown, he'd disappear for days at a time, chasing contracts in Denver, Salt Lake City, sometimes as far as Seattle. I never questioned it. Why would I? The money was good, and he always came back with stories about terrible hotel coffee and endless PowerPoint presentations. That Tuesday started like any other. I was halfway through my morning coffee, reviewing quarterly projections, when my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but the voice that followed turned my blood to ice. "Mrs. Morgan, this is Officer Daniel Reeves with the Summit County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about your husband, Ethan Morgan." The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the kitchen tiles. Brown liquid spread across the white floor like a map of my unraveling world. "There's been an incident," Officer Reeves continued. "Your husband was reported missing from the Red Cliffs Mountain Resort yesterday evening. His colleagues say he didn't return from a hiking trail, and we've initiated a search." Missing. The word echoed in my skull, refusing to make sense. Ethan wasn't supposed to be at Red Cliffs. He'd told me he was presenting at a conference in Boulder, showed me the agenda, kissed me goodbye Sunday morning with that same distracted smile he always wore before trips. Within an hour, my house transformed into command central for panic. My parents arrived first, followed by Ethan's family, their faces painted with the same disbelief I felt. But it was my sister, Brianna Cooper, who took charge with an intensity that should have been my first warning. "I'm staying with you," Brianna announced, not asking but declaring, as she dropped her overnight bag in my hallway. "You shouldn't be alone right now." Brianna had always been the prettier one, the charming one 2 years younger, but somehow always 2 steps ahead in life. While I analyzed data, she sold luxury real estate, flashing that megawatt smile that could convince anyone to sign anything. Now that smile was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before: raw, visceral fear. "They'll find him," she kept saying, her hands shaking as she poured wine neither of us would drink. "These search teams know what they're doing. He probably just got turned around on the trail." But Ethan didn't hike. In 7 years of marriage, I'd never once seen him voluntarily choose nature over air conditioning. The conference story was clearly a lie. But why? And why was Brianna acting like she'd lost something precious too? The search teams worked through the night. I sat by the phone while Brianna paced my living room, checking her phone every few minutes with an urgency that made my stomach twist. When exhaustion finally forced me to bed around 3 in the morning, I could still hear her downstairs, whispering on the phone to someone who wasn't family. Wednesday brought no news and more questions. The police had traced Ethan's credit card to the resort he'd checked in alone Sunday afternoon, requested their most remote cabin, the conference in Boulder. It didn't exist. His company confirmed he'd taken personal days, telling his manager he needed time to handle a family situation. What family situation? I'd asked Officer Reeves when he delivered this update. He'd looked at me with the kind of pity reserved for wives who were the last to know. "We were hoping you could tell us, Mrs. Morgan." That evening, as Brianna continued her vigil in my home, she let something slip that made my skin crawl. "I just can't believe he'd go to that trail alone," she said, staring out the window at nothing. The Elk Ridge path is so isolated this time of year. I hadn't told her which trail. The police hadn't released that detail. "How did you know which trail?" I asked. my voice steady despite the alarm bells screaming in my head. Brianna's face went pale. Officer Reeves must have mentioned it when he called earlier. But Officer Reeves hadn't called the house. I'd been the only one speaking to the police. She covered quickly, tears suddenly appearing. I'm sorry. I'm just so scattered. This is all so overwhelming. I can't imagine what you're going through. The performance was good, but not perfect, because in that moment of panic, I'd seen something else in her eyes, not sympathy for my loss, but grief for her own. My sister wasn't just worried about Ethan. She was mourning him. The next morning, Police Chief Logan Pierce arrived at my door. Unlike Officer Reeves with his careful sympathy, Pierce carried himself like a man who'd seen too many marriages dissolve under investigation. His weathered face studied mine as we sat at my kitchen table, Brianna hovering nearby like a concerned guardian. Mrs. Morgan, we need to discuss some irregularities we've discovered, Pierce began, his notebook open but his eyes on me. Your husband's phone records show multiple calls to a number we haven't been able to identify. The owner used a prepaid phone, paid in cash. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice level. Affair. That's one possibility, Pierce admitted. The calls increased significantly over the past 8 months. Always during business hours, never weekends. 8 months. I did the math quickly. That would have started right after Brianna's 30th birthday party, the one Ethan had helped organize at her insistence. They'd spent weeks planning it together while I was buried in year-end reports. I'll need to review your husband's financial records, Pierce continued. Credit card statements, bank accounts, anything that might tell us where he was actually going during these trips. Of course, I agreed, then noticed Brianna had gone rigid beside me. Is that really necessary? She interjected, her voice pitched too high. I mean, shouldn't you be focusing on the search instead of invading their privacy? Pierce's gaze shifted to her, sharp and assessing. Miss Cooper, in missing persons cases, every detail matters. You'd be surprised what financial records can reveal. After Pierce left, Brianna became almost manic in her attention. She insisted on cooking every meal, doing my laundry, fielding calls from concerned friends. But her care felt like surveillance, her presence a weight I couldn't shake. You should rest, she kept saying. Let me handle everything. But I couldn't rest. While she fussed over casseroles nobody would eat, I sat with my laptop, pulling up our credit card statements. What I found made my chest tighten. Charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, all in Denver, all for amounts that suggested 2 people dining. A jewelry store purchase from 6 weeks ago, $400 that never resulted in a gift for me. Hotel charges that didn't match his supposed itineraries. Then I found a receipt from La Bernardine, Red Cliff's most exclusive restaurant, dated 2 nights before Ethan disappeared. The amount was for $230, definitely a meal for 2. Find something. Brianna's voice behind me made me jump. She was looking at my screen with an expression I couldn't read. Just going through finances for Chief Pierce, I said, closing the laptop. Nothing interesting. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the computer. You know, I've been thinking, maybe Ethan was meeting someone about a job opportunity. He mentioned once that he wasn't happy at work. Another slip. Ethan had only started complaining about work recently, and only to me. At least, I'd thought it was only to me. When did he tell you that? I asked carefully. Oh, you know, just in passing at some family thing, she said, waving vaguely. But her hand trembled, and she quickly shoved it in her pocket. That afternoon, while Brianna was on another mysterious phone call in the guest room, I did something I'd never done before I went through her things. Her purse sat on the hallway table, designer leather that cost more than most people's rent. I justified it as looking for tissues, knowing I was lying to myself. Her wallet was there, thick with credit cards and cash, but behind it, tucked into an inside pocket, was something that shouldn't have been there, a room key card from the Red Cliffs Mountain Resort. The magnetic strip was worn from use. My phone buzzed with a text from Pierce. Found something. Can you come to the station alone? Important you don't mention this to anyone, including family. I looked up to find Brianna watching me from the stairs, her face unreadable. Who was that? She asked. Just work. I lied, slipping my phone away. They're being understanding, but I need to submit some reports. She nodded slowly, but something in her posture had changed. The mask of concerned sister was slipping, revealing something calculating underneath. Haley, she said softly, descending the stairs. If you knew something about Ethan, something that might hurt but could help find him, you'd want to know. Right. My blood chilled. What are you talking about? She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. Nothing. I'm worried we're not getting the whole truth from the police. They might be hiding things to spare your feelings. But that wasn't what she'd meant to say. In that moment of hesitation, I'd seen the war in her eyes, confession battling self-preservation, and self-preservation won. That night, Brianna finally crashed from exhaustion, passing out on my couch after downing 2 glasses of wine she'd claimed were for me. I stood in the doorway watching her sleep. This sister I'd trusted with everything, and felt something cold crystallize in my chest. Her purse sat where she'd left it, carelessly tossed on the coffee table. My hands didn't shake as I reached for it this time. I knew exactly what I was looking for. The main compartment held the usual chaos lipstick, gum wrappers, a phone charger, but the inside zipper pocket, the one she'd been protective of earlier, that's where I found it. Ethan's wallet. The brown leather was soft under my fingers, worn in the exact spot where he habitually rubbed his thumb. His driver's license stared back at me, that crooked smile from 5 years ago when he'd had to renew it. Credit cards all present and accounted for. $43 in cash. But it was what I found behind the bills that shattered my world completely. Where our wedding photo should have been the one I'd carefully trimmed to fit 3 years ago was a Polaroid I'd never seen. Ethan and Brianna at what looked like a cabin, his arms wrapped around her from behind, both of them laughing at something beyond the camera. She was wearing the necklace I'd noticed her sporting recently, the one she'd claimed was a gift from a client, the same necklace from that $400 charge. The timestamp on the Polaroid's border read 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, when Ethan was supposedly at a conference in Phoenix. 3 weeks ago, when Brianna had visited her college friend in Aspen. I slipped the wallet back exactly as I'd found it, then took photos of everything with my phone. The Polaroid, the credit cards, the exact position in her purse. Evidence. Because that's what this had become, not a missing persons case, but a crime scene of a different sort. Brianna stirred on the couch, mumbling something in her sleep. I froze, watching her face relax back into unconsciousness. In sleep, she looked younger, vulnerable, like the sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the sister who was fucking my husband. I went to the kitchen and made myself tea with mechanical precision. 1 tea bag, 8 ounces of water heated to exactly 190 degrees, 2 minutes of steeping. The routine kept my hands steady while my mind raced. They'd been together at Redcliffe's, multiple times, based on that worn key card. The restaurant receipt made sense now, their anniversary dinner. Perhaps the thought made bile rise in my throat. My phone buzzed. Pierce, texting again. Urgent. Need to see you first thing tomorrow. Found footage. Footage. Of course there would be cameras at the resort. Of course they would have captured. What, Ethan disappearing into the woods, or Ethan and Brianna together, destroying my life frame by frame. I looked back at Brianna, still dead to the world on my couch. She'd been here for 3 days, playing the role of supportive sister while wearing my husband's gift around her neck. The audacity of it was almost admirable, but she'd made a mistake keeping his wallet. Why a trophy insurance? Or was she planning to plant it somewhere, create a false trail for the police? I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, our bedroom, and sat on Ethan's side of the bed. His pillow still smelled like his cologne, the expensive one I'd bought him last Christmas. Had he worn it for her? The photo on his nightstand showed us in Hawaii 2 years ago, tanned and smiling after renewing our vows on the beach. We'd promised to be better, to prioritize each other, to never let work come between us again. I picked up the frame and studied his face, looking for signs I'd missed. The distance in his eyes, the forced smile, the way he stood slightly apart even when holding me. Had he already been with her then? Or was that the trip that made him realize he wanted someone else? My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Hello. Breathing. Heavy, panicked breathing. Ethan. The name escaped before I could stop it. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering. Then I heard Brianna's voice from downstairs, urgent and low. You can't call here. No, she doesn't know anything. Just stay where you are. I'll handle it. I crept to the top of the stairs, straining to hear. Told you this was insane. Should have waited. The police are everywhere. A long pause. I love you too. Just don't do anything stupid. The moment I heard her footsteps approaching the stairs, I slipped back into the bedroom, diving under the covers fully clothed. Through slitted eyes, I watched her peek in, checking on me, checking if I'd heard. I kept my breathing deep, and even as she lingered in the doorway, finally, she retreated. In the darkness, I felt something shift inside me. The grieving wife was dead. The trusting sister was gone. What remained was someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of playing their game better than they ever could, someone who would burn their whole world down and dance in the ashes. The next morning, I left Brianna sleeping and drove to meet Pierce, but I didn't go straight to the station. First, I stopped at Northbridge Analytics, using my security badge to access the building at 6:45 when I knew it would be empty. Ethan's company laptop was synced to our shared cloud storage, a detail he'd apparently forgotten. Within minutes, I was downloading everything: emails, calendar entries, expense reports, the digital breadcrumbs of Betrayal, all copying to my personal drive. His deleted emails were particularly illuminating. Dozens of messages to B, Cooper Luxury Realty Calo, com, growing progressively intimate over the months. The last one, sent the morning he left, simply read, "After this weekend, we won't have to hide anymore." I found the cabin rental next, buried in his browser history. Mountain View Retreat, a private cabin near Red Cliffs, booked under the name Brian Coleman Brianna Cooper, barely disguised. The reservation showed multiple bookings over 6 months, always paying in cash at the property. My phone buzzed. Pierce. Where are you? We need to talk. I screenshot everything, uploaded it to 3 different cloud services, and emailed copies to an old college email account Ethan didn't know existed. Then I drove to the station, my face carefully composed in the rearview mirror. Pierce's office smelled like burnt coffee and disappointment. He pulled up footage on his computer, angling the screen toward me. This is from the resort's parking area, 2 days before your husband disappeared. The grainy footage showed Ethan's BMW pulling into a spot. He got out, grabbed a bag, and walked toward the cabins, alone. Then, 30 minutes later, a familiar white Mercedes pulled up nearby. Brianna stepped out, looked around nervously, and headed in the same direction. Your sister was there, Pierce said unnecessarily. I see that, I managed, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Mrs. Morgan, I need to ask you something difficult. Were you aware of any relationship between your husband and sister? No. The truth, delivered flat and cold. Pierce studied me carefully. There's more. The resort staff recognized both of them. They've been regular visitors since last summer, always booking the same cabin, always arriving separately. He pulled up another file bank records. Your husband withdrew $8,000 in cash over the past 6 months. Small amounts, nothing to trigger alerts, but consistent. We found a second phone in his car at the resort, prepaid, with only one number in the contacts. Brianna's, I said. You knew. I'm learning. Pierce leaned back, his expression shifting from investigator to something almost paternal. Mrs. Morgan, we don't believe your husband is actually missing. His car is still at the resort. No signs of struggle. His hiking gear was never removed from his trunk. You think he ran? I think he's hiding. The question is why. I knew why. The answer was in an email I'd found, dated a month ago. Ethan's company was under federal investigation for embezzlement. As CFO, he was a person of interest. The walls had been closing in, and he'd chosen to run with her. I need to go home, I said. Brianna will wonder where I am. Pierce nodded. Be careful, Mrs. Morgan. People do dangerous things when they're cornered. On the drive home, I made a detour to Mountain View Retreat. The cabin rental office was run by an elderly woman who barely looked up from her romance novel. I'm supposed to meet my husband at the Coleman cabin. I lied smoothly. But I forgot which number. Cabin 12, she said, sliding a map across the counter. Though Mr. Coleman usually just goes straight there. Knows the way by now. Cabin 12 sat isolated at the edge of the property, surrounded by pines. The door was locked, but the window beside it was cracked open. I'd learned a lot being married to a security consultant, including how laughably easy most windows were to breach. Inside, the cabin reeked of their presence. Brianna's perfume lingered in the air. 2 wine glasses sat unwashed by the sink. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled in a way that made my stomach turn. But it was the bathroom that provided the goldmine. Brianna's prescription bottles, including birth control pills, started 8 months ago, according to the label. Ethan's spare glasses, the ones he claimed he'd lost. A pregnancy test box in the trash. Used test nowhere to be found. I photographed everything, then found what I'd really come for: the cabin's security system. A basic setup with a digital recorder. I pocketed the memory card and replaced it with a blank one from my camera bag. As I drove home, my phone rang. Brianna. Where are you? Her voice was sharp, panicked. Getting coffee, I lied. Needed some air. You should have woken me. It's not safe for you to be alone right now. The irony almost made me laugh. Not safe. The danger had been sleeping in my house, eating at my table, comforting me while wearing my husband's gift around her neck. I'll be home in 10 minutes, I said. Hurry, she said. Chief Pierce called. He wants to talk to both of us. Both of us. Of course. Pierce was closing in, and Brianna knew it. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw her silhouette in the window, pacing like a caged animal, the predator suddenly realizing she might be prey. Good. Let her panic. Let her wonder what I knew. The hunt was just beginning. I think we should have everyone over for dinner tomorrow, I announced that evening, watching Brianna's face carefully. A prayer circle for Ethan, Mom, Dad, his parents, maybe Aunt Ruth and Uncle James. Brianna's hand stilled on her wine glass. Are you sure that's a good idea? You're under so much stress. Actually, it's exactly what I need, I said, managing a fragile smile. Having family around, showing unity, Ethan would want us to stay strong together. The word together seemed to physically pain her. She forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Of course, whatever you need, I'll help you prepare everything. You're so good to me, I said, reaching across to squeeze her hand. I don't know what I'd do without my sister. She squeezed back, her palm sweaty. We're family. It's what we do. I spent that night planning meticulously. The menu would be Ethan's favorites, cruel irony wrapped in comfort food. Prime rib, those garlic mashed potatoes he always requested for birthdays, the wine from our anniversary trip to Napa, every detail designed to twist the knife a little deeper. The next morning, I woke early and drove to Best Buy, purchasing a small projector and a wireless presentation remote. The teenager who helped me probably thought I was preparing for a business meeting. In a way, I was having family over, I explained at the grocery store, loading my cart with enough food for 12. The cashier offered condolences she'd heard about my missing husband through the small-town grapevine. We're praying he comes home, I said, loud enough for Brianna to hear from where she waited by the door. That afternoon, as Brianna helped me prepare the roast, she seemed to unravel more with each passing hour. twice. She excused herself to the bathroom. I could hear her on the phone, whispering urgently, "Just stay where you are. No, you can't. Because she's planning something. I can feel it. Just trust me." I hummed while I worked, sectioning potatoes with the same precision I used for data analysis. Each cut clean, purposeful, final. By 6 o'clock, the house filled with family. My parents arrived first, followed by Ethan's mother Margaret and father Robert. Aunt Ruth brought her famous cornbread. Uncle James contributed a bottle of whiskey for the nerves. Brianna had changed into a black dress, mourning colors. How appropriate. She worked the room like the real estate agent she was, all false comfort and practiced sympathy. But I caught her checking her phone obsessively, her smile cracking at the edges. "Before we eat," I announced, standing at the head of the table, "I wanted to share something." I'd connected my laptop to the TV earlier, hidden the remote in my pocket. Everyone turned to me with supportive faces, expecting a tearful speech about hope and faith. "Family means everything to me," I began, my voice steady. "Trust, loyalty, love. These are the foundations we build our lives on. When someone betrays that trust, it doesn't just break hearts. It destroys entire worlds." Mom reached for my hand. "Sweetheart, Ethan will come back." "Oh, I know exactly where Ethan is," I said, clicking the remote. The first image filled the screen: Ethan and Brianna at the cabin, the Polaroid I'd found in her purse. Gasps echoed around the table. Click. Their email exchanges. Highlight reel of the most damning passages. What started 8 months ago as just coffee apparently evolved quite quickly. I narrated calmly. Click. The credit card statements. Romantic dinners every Tuesday when Ethan was supposedly at client meetings. Click. The cabin reservation history. 6 months of weekend getaways to their private love nest. Brianna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Haley, stop. Sit down," I commanded, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We're just getting started." Click. Security footage from the resort. This is from 5 days ago. Notice how they arrived separately but walked to the same cabin. Very clever. Margaret was crying. Robert's face had turned purple with rage. My mother stared at Brianna with a mixture of horror and disgust. "You knew," Mom whispered. "You knew we were searching for him, and you knew where he was." "It's not what you think," Brianna started. Click. The pregnancy test box from the cabin bathroom. "Congratulations might be in order," I said conversationally, "though I'm curious how you'll explain that to your clients." "Enough!" Brianna screamed. "Yes, we fell in love. Is that what you want to hear? That your perfect husband chose me? That your boring, predictable life drove him into my arms?" The room went silent except for the sound of Margaret's sobbing. I smiled then, a cold thing that felt foreign on my face. "Actually, what I want to hear is how you're going to explain to the FBI why you helped a suspect in a federal embezzlement case disappear." Brianna's face went white. "What? Oh, did Ethan forget to mention that part? The investigation. The missing funds. The federal warrant that's being issued as we speak." I clicked the remote one final time. Ethan's company email about the investigation, dated 6 weeks ago. "He used you," I said simply. "Needed someone to help him run, someone to access accounts, someone stupid enough to think it was love." The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that makes your ears ring. Brianna stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Around the table, our family sat in various states of shock, Margaret still crying quietly. Robert's fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. My parents staring at Brianna as if she'd become a stranger. "You're lying," Brianna finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, swiping to another email. "This one's from 3 weeks ago. Ethan to you. Once we get to Vancouver, we can start fresh. The accounts are ready." "Did you really think he loved you?" Brianna. "Or were you just the easiest mark?" "Shut up. She lunged across the table, but Uncle James caught her arm. "You destroyed everything!" she screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. "You never deserved him 7 years, and you treated him like furniture, like something you'd gotten used to having around, and you treated him like a prize to be won," I countered, my calm a stark contrast to her hysteria. "Tell me, when did it start? Was it that night at your birthday party, when you got drunk and slow danced with my husband while I was cleaning up your mess in the kitchen?" Her face crumpled. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We just connected. You were always so cold, so focused on your spreadsheets and data. He needed someone who made him feel alive." "Alive!" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Is that what you call it? Let me show you alive." Click. The next slide showed a medical record I'd found in Ethan's emails, a prescription for erectile dysfunction medication, dated 4 months ago. "Apparently, you weren't quite the inspiration you thought you were." Brianna's face turned scarlet. "You're sick. You're actually enjoying this." "Enjoying." I stood, walking slowly around the table. "No, I'm not enjoying discovering that my husband and sister have been fucking behind my back for 8 months. I'm not enjoying learning that every family dinner, every holiday, every moment of comfort you offered was a lie." I stopped behind her chair. "What I am enjoying is watching you realize that you gave up everything: your family, your reputation, your career for a man who was using you as an escape route." "Where is he?" Robert suddenly spoke, his voice dangerous. "Where is my son?" Brianna's phone buzzed on the table. Before she could grab it, I snatched it up, reading the text aloud. "They know. Get out now. Meet at backup location." "Too late," I said, tossing the phone back to her. "I already gave Chief Pierce the cabin's location and the backup rental in Morrison. They picked him up an hour ago." That was a lie I hadn't told Pierce yet, but Brianna didn't know that. She grabbed her phone, frantically typing, calling, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely hold it. "He's not answering," she whispered. "Why isn't he answering?" "Because he already left you behind," Mom said, her voice cold as winter. "Just like he left Haley. Men like that don't love anyone but themselves." "You don't understand," Brianna sobbed. "We're having a baby. I'm pregnant." The confession hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Margaret made a sound like a wounded animal. My father stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Get out," he said quietly. "Get out of this house. Daddy, please." "You are not my daughter," he said, each word deliberate. "My daughter would never, could never." "But the baby," Brianna started, "will grow up knowing exactly what kind of mother it has." I interrupted. "A homewrecker, a liar, a woman who destroyed her own family for a man who's about to spend the next decade in federal prison." I clicked the remote one final time. The screen showed a document I'd prepared that afternoon: divorce papers, already filled out. "I filed these yesterday," I announced, "along with a civil suit against you for alienation of affection. It's an old law, but still valid in this state. Everything you own, that condo you're so proud of, the Mercedes, that real estate business you built, I'm going to take it all." "You can't." "I can. I will. And I'll raise that baby myself if I have to, because God knows you won't be able to from prison." "Prison!" Her voice cracked. "I didn't steal anything." "No, but you aided and abetted a federal suspect. You helped him hide assets. Those transfers to Canadian banks. Your name is on them too. Your laptop, the one you so carelessly left open at the cabin, has all the evidence the FBI needs." It was a gamble I hadn't actually found her laptop, but the way her face drained of all color told me I'd hit truth. "You didn't just betray me," I said, moving back to my seat. "You buried me alive. But I dug myself out, and now you'll suffocate under your own dirt." The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. I smiled, checking my watch. 8:30 p.m. Right on time. "That would be Chief Pierce," I said pleasantly. I invited him for dessert. Chief Pierce entered with 2 officers flanking him. their presence immediately shifting the room's energy from family drama to legal proceeding. He surveyed the scene, the projection still displaying divorce papers, Brianna's tear-streaked face, the stunned family members, and nodded to me. Mrs. Morgan, you said you had information about your husband's whereabouts. Everything you need is on this drive, I said, sliding a USB across the table. Financial records, emails, property rentals, and security footage from the Mountain View retreat. Cabin 12 has been their meeting spot for 6 months. Pierce pocketed the drive, then turned to Brianna. Miss Cooper, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. I want a lawyer, she said immediately. That's your right. But you should know that Ethan Morgan was apprehended 40 minutes ago trying to board a flight to Vancouver using a false ID. So it was true. He'd been caught. I felt nothing, no relief, no satisfaction, just a cold emptiness where my heart used to be. He's already talking, Pierce continued. Seems eager to make a deal. You might want to consider doing the same. Brianna's phone rang. She looked at Pierce, who nodded. She answered on speaker. Baby, thank God. Ethan's voice filled the room. They know everything. Brianna sobbed. Haley knows everything. A pause. Then, how much does she actually have? I took the phone from Brianna's limp hand. Hello, husband. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Haley, I can explain. No need. Your girlfriend and I have been having the most illuminating conversation. By the way, congratulations on the baby. I'm sure it'll love visiting Daddy in federal prison. This isn't what you think. You're right, it's worse. See, I found something interesting in your deleted files. Those transfers to offshore accounts, they started 2 years ago. Long before Brianna. She wasn't your accomplice. Ethan. She was your cover story. Brianna's head snapped up, confusion replacing despair. You needed someone to pin it on when things went south. I continued, watching realization dawn on my sister's face. Someone whose name you could attach to transactions. Someone who trusted you enough not to question the papers you had her sign. Tell me, did you ever actually love her, or was she just the most convenient victim? Don't listen to her, Bree. She's trying to turn us against each other. The pregnancy was the perfect touch, I interrupted. Lock her in with a baby, make her complicit, then disappear and let her take the fall. But you didn't count on getting caught at the airport, did you? Brianna, baby, I love you. Pierce took the phone. Mr. Morgan, anything you say is being recorded and will be used in court. The line went dead. Brianna stared at nothing, processing. The investment accounts he had me open. He said they were for our future. They were, I said. Just not yours. Pierce signaled his officers. Miss Cooper, we need to go. As they helped her stand, she looked at me with something between hate and devastation. How long have you known? Since I found your birth control prescription at the cabin. Started 8 months ago, right when the affair began. But here's the thing. Brianna Ethan had a vasectomy 3 years ago. So whose baby is it really? The question landed like a bomb. Brianna's knees buckled. I didn't. We were careful. It must be. She couldn't finish. Your ex, Brandon. The one who's been calling you nonstop. The one you saw that weekend you claimed to be at a spa. I'd found those calls in the phone records Pierce had showed me. Did you think claiming it was Ethan's would make him stay, or were you hoping I'd never find out about the affair at all? Margaret stood up shakily. I need to leave. I can't. This is too much. Robert helped her toward the door, pausing beside me. The divorce papers. Make sure you get everything. That bastard doesn't deserve a penny after what he's put you through. One by one, the family filed out. My parents lingered, Dad's hand on my shoulder. How are you so calm? Mom asked. Because I already grieved. I said simply. The moment I found his wallet in her purse, my marriage was over. My sister was dead to me. Everything since then has just been settling accounts. After Pierce took Brianna away, I stood in my empty house, surveying the abandoned dinner, the untouched food, the overturned chairs, the the projection still glowing with divorce papers on the wall. I pulled out my laptop and began typing, "Notice of civil suit alienation of affection and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Plaintiff Haley Morgan. Defendants Ethan Morgan and Brianna Cooper." The financial forensics would take months to sort out. But I had time. Ethan's assets were frozen the moment he was arrested. The house was in my name, only a detail he'd arranged for tax purposes that now worked in my favor. His 401k, his stock options, the vacation property in Vail. He thought I didn't know about all of it would be mine. As for Brianna, her real estate license would be revoked once the fraud charges were filed. The pregnancy would complicate things, but a DNA test would sort that out quickly enough. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. We can work this out. Please." I deleted it without responding. There was nothing to work out. They'd made their choices. Now they'd live with the consequences. Or rather, they'd live with them from separate federal facilities. 3 weeks later, Brianna stood at my door. No Mercedes this time, it had been seized as evidence. She looked smaller somehow, hollow, wearing a cheap coat I didn't recognize. The pregnancy was starting to show. "Please," she said. 5 minutes. I could have slammed the door. Should have. Instead, I stepped aside and let her enter one last time. She sat on the same couch where she'd slept that night, where she'd pretended to comfort me while texting my husband. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "The baby isn't his," she said quietly. "The DNA test confirmed it. It's Brandon's." I said nothing. The information didn't surprise me or change anything. "I lost everything," she continued. "My license, my business. My savings are going to legal fees. Mom and Dad won't even look at me. And Ethan..." She laughed bitterly. "His lawyer says he's claiming I seduced him, that I manipulated him into the affair to get access to his money. And you came here to ask for forgiveness. To ask for mercy," she said. "You're suing me for everything I have left. I'll have nothing for this baby." "That's not my problem." "We're sisters, Haley. We share blood." "Blood doesn't make you family," I said, cutting her off. "Loyalty does." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I know what I did was unforgivable." "Then why are you here asking for forgiveness?" "Because I'm desperate," she admitted. "Because I'm scared. Because I destroyed everything for a man who never loved either of us." "No," I corrected. "You destroyed everything because you wanted what was mine. It was never about Ethan. It was about winning, about proving you could take him." "Well, congratulations, Brianna. You won. How's the prize working out for you?" She started crying then. Ugly sobs that shook her whole body. The sister in me, the one who used to braid her hair and check for monsters under her bed, felt a flicker of something. I killed it immediately. "Please," she begged. "The baby didn't do anything wrong." Neither did I. I stood, walking to the door and opening it wide. "The lawsuit stands. The charges stand. And this is the last time you'll ever step foot in my house." She stood slowly, defeated, at the threshold. She turned back one more time. "I loved him," she whispered. "I know you don't believe me, but I really thought he loved me too." "I know," I said. "That's what makes you so pathetic." I closed the door in her face. Through the window, I watched her walk to the bus stop, the girl who used to brag about her Mercedes, now waiting for public transportation in the Colorado cold. My phone rang. Ethan's lawyer, probably with another plea deal. I let it go to voicemail, then I blocked the number. Tomorrow. I'd block the next one too. The divorce would be final in 6 months. Ethan would serve a minimum of 8 years, possibly 12 if the prosecutor's case held. Brianna would get probation but would carry the felony conviction forever. The baby would be born into chaos of its mother's making. And me, I stood in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of a life that never really existed. The pictures were gone now, packed away in the basement. The wedding china had been donated, his clothes, her forgotten scarf, every trace of them erased. Some would say I should have taken the high road. Should have forgiven. Should have been the bigger person. But they didn't find their husband's wallet in their sister's purse. They didn't uncover 8 months of lies served with smiles at Sunday dinners. They didn't have to rebuild themselves from the ashes of deliberate betrayal. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff, the bottle I'd been saving for our anniversary. It tasted like victory and vengeance and something else. Freedom. The doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't answer. I was done opening doors for people who would only bring destruction. Instead, I raised my glass to the empty room. To the hunter, I said aloud. May she never become prey again. The silence that answered was perfect. No forgiveness, no healing, no looking back. Just the cold satisfaction of a debt collected in full, and a woman who learned that the best revenge isn't living well, it's making sure the people who buried you alive never breathe freely again. The door stayed closed. It would stay closed forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal and revenge. I'm curious to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Haley's position? Let me know in the comments.